Greetings and welcome to another episode of Master Phil in Your Corner. This is episode number 122, and we'll be speaking to masculinity and what has happened to it. But before we get into the broadcast, we have to make a couple of shameless plugs here. If you anything in terms of fitness, self-defense, training, nutrition, now I have my own nutrition line, go to philross.com. And I just dropped a new book called A Guide to Street Survival and Strength. You got to check it out. It's on Amazon, or it's also available on my site, survivalstrong.philross.com. Or you can always just go to philross.com, peruse the site, and get into it there and see what we have to offer. And just another announcement, the Body Bell method, which I just ran a certification a few weeks back. We're doing about two more slated, and I'll give the exact dates for that once the dates have been solidified. We're toggling between a couple of dates, but I'll be featured on the show Beta Blocks on Amazon Prime and an entrepreneurial contest to see whose business will take home the prize. And I'm confident that the Body Bell method will reign supreme. Anyway, without any further ado, I'd love to introduce one of our guests. He's a repeat offender here on the program. It's Dr. Jack Kerwick. He's a college professor in philosophy, and we're here to talk about what's happened to the men. What's going on? Jack, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Always a
I'm glad I
pleasure.
could finally make it.
Yeah, right? Inside joke.
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah. So, yeah, so tell us. You recently dropped a book last fall, and
Right.
you talk to the masculinity subject in the book. And can you embellish us a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, so I co-authored The Warrior Scholar Ideal, New Essays on an Old Vision. It's published by Stairway Press. I co-authored it with um, the founder of Warrior Flow Combatives. It's the art of which I'm a master. And the founder is retired Lieutenant Colonel Marine Corps Al Ridenhour. He founded Warrior Flow Combatives,
Mhm.
and it's really just it's a collection of essays, as the title indicates. And what we're really doing in this work is just exploring an old vision of manhood that extends back centuries and millennia, and it crosses cultures.
Yeah.
So, it really is a universal ideal of manhood. And it's this idea that like the perfect man, or the ideal man, I suppose, is someone who has both physical and intellectual virtue.
Yes.
And the thesis is this. Okay, now it's very customary for a lot of contemporary cultural commentators to sort of attribute the crisis of manhood that's being witnessed in the West to feminism,
Hmm.
which really originated in its first wave about a century ago.
Yeah.
But the feminism that a lot of people have in mind is really a contemporary feminism in its contemporary iteration. And I think that's very
Could you expand on
short-sighted.
that? Could you expand on that? The feminism in its contemporary manifestation. What?
Yeah, as I understand it, the first wave of feminism is really just about women's suffrage, women's vote. Earlier generations of feminism, or earlier generations of feminists from the
Mhm.
first half of the 20th century, really were interested in making sure that that husbands, fathers were able to make a livable wage. So they were still more family centered.
Mhm.
When I refer to feminism in its contemporary iteration,
Mhm.
I have in mind that wave of feminism that, say, took flight in the late 1960s, early 1970s, and that in varying degrees kind of remains with us today. Again,
Yeah.
I think feminism itself is suffering a bit of a crisis
Mhm.
with the emergence of transgenderism and the
Yeah.
silence of these feminists on biological males competing in female sports and whatnot. But that's another topic,
because it
and that's
seems
for
that,
them to sort out.
yeah, it seems that these trans men, women, whatever, they're winning prizes that were designated for women. So even in some of these beauty contests, so they trying to say that men are even better at being women than women are.
I know. So you can see it's a real, yeah. I mean, it's a real kind of a real peculiar place for self-avowed feminists to be in.
Yeah,
And from what I understand, given that feminism is typically associated with the political left, for lack of a better term,
yeah.
within the left, there's a lot of division
Mhm.
right now. I mean, that really is a state of confusion,
Yeah.
um, right? So, but that's for them to sort out. My argument or our argument in this book of ours, and it's an argument that I try to pursue really in the essays that I've been putting out, is that we need to look back much further to to I think really appreciate what's happening now. This didn't just happen overnight, and
Oh,
every right. I mean, every generation thinks the generation that comes after it, is soft or weak, or that these problems just cropped up, within that place time. I don't think that's the case.
no.
I
It
said there
never
was a
happens overnight.
time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it never happens overnight. It's
No,
always,
no. I mean, you're talking long stretches of time,
yeah.
and so what I'm arguing is that today you have the quote unquote tough guy as one ideal or one conception of manhood, and that's usually juxtaposed with another conception of the male or the man, which is that of the wonk,
Yeah.
kind of like the dork, right? And I look at these as being two pieces of a puzzle, but most people don't recognize that they are pieces of a puzzle. They don't recognize that there was ever even a puzzle,
Yeah.
right? And just at one time, and again, you can find this cross culturally,
Mhm.
trans historically, both the physical and the intellectual virtues were conjoined seamlessly within the ideal man. That warrior scholar ideal has been undercut, so the pieces of the puzzle have been disjointed from one another,
Mhm.
and that's where I think we find ourselves now.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that people, are too quick to operate on the premise of generalizations and putting people into boxes based on very little
Right.
information,
Exactly.
without looking at the whole spectrum. So,
Correct.
but the funny thing is that if we just look at it from an observer point of view, look, I know that my dad's generation was tough, and his father's generation was tough, and they had it harder. They had it, my grandparents had it harder than my parents, and then
Yeah.
some ways, I've had it easier than my parents.
Right.
But,
Right. Right.
but there was I'm sure you're familiar with the book called The Warrior Ethos, and
Yes.
yeah,
I never read it, but I
okay,
know of it. Yeah.
it's a short read. It's really easy. You read it in like an hour or two. It's really quick. Um, but it says a lot about certain people because we sought out, we didn't have to, but we sought out the difficult things. Matter of fact, when I was I think like a senior or junior in high school, this guy from Iran was over, and this was when we had good relationship with them. This was prior to
Oh yes. Yeah.
any
The
taking.
Shaw. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This was when the Shah was still there. Um, and we're training together, and he's like, oh, I really respect you. I'm like, why? He goes, well, you don't have to do this sport. You choose to do it. See, in our
Mm,
country, we're kind of told, hey, you could be a good wrestler, you're a wrestler, you're a gymnast, you're whatever, high jumper, that's what you do.
wow.
But because I sought out the tougher route, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
and And when I read the book, The Warrior's Ethos, says that certain people are drawn to that. Certain people, like this guy's. I have nothing against money. Wish I had more, right?
Right.
But some people are driven solely by that, and a lot of people that have like kind of the warrior ethos mindset, you're called to something a little bit different. You have a
Right.
very good sense of honor. You have a sense of duty. You have a strength of a sense of righteousness, and you pursue other things, and then like the money aspects, whatever, are secondary, not primary focus.
Right.
I'm not saying that there aren't plenty of people with a warrior ethos and mentality that made money, but I'm saying it's not the main focus. The main focus
Correct.
is the righteousness, is the sheepdog, guard dog kind of mentality, um,
Right.
and pushing oneself physically and mentally to be able to go beyond. There was never a gun to my head. There's not a gun to your head to do what you do, right?
Right. Right.
Nobody makes you go and work out every day.
That's right.
There's no gun to your head, but you do it because you're supposed to. You feel like you should do that, and if you want to be prepared, you know.
Correct. Correct.
So it's, but the thing is, I see there were a lot of guys like me when I was a young guy, but I
Mm.
walk around right now and I see some of these people. I mean, went and picked up some Mexican food the other day, and I walked in. My wife's in the car, and I mean, everybody was ridiculously soft. And it wasn't a
Mm.
fancy place, it's I go to a hole in the wall Mexican place. It's awesome. Um, and it's just like I just came out, just like I don't know what these guys are thinking, what they're doing. They can't take care of themselves, and they harken back to like Jordan Peterson says, listen, you know, you have to have the ability to be violent in order
That's
to
right.
protect. And it is very natural for us to protect. I mean, I just had a recent situation where my wife and I were about 8 feet away from a bear.
Wow. Really?
This was Sunday. Uh, yeah, we are hiking,
Wow. Really?
and we're right by our house. And there was a bear leaning on the tree right next to the road. And we were walking right past. Couldn't see it at first because there's a big one of those big, like 5 foot grass mounds, 8 feet away from it. And I said to her, okay, listen to me. Don't run. Walk away. And
Ah, no.
I eyeballed the bear. I looked right at it, right in the eye. It's kind of freaky, but I'm looking at it, and I made myself tall. And and of course, she didn't listen. She was I saw elbows and ass heading down the street, but I stood there between, and I'm
Jeez,
Catholic.
man.
Yeah, yeah. So I said, man, I drew down, and I was fine, and the thing took off. So, but
Well,
yeah.
I'll be real quick. I won't mention any names just in case he would have a problem with it. Someone
Mhm,
someone who trained with me, who sort
mhm,
of was training me a few years
mhm,
ago at your old club.
mhm.
Story I heard about him recently, not from him, but from others,
Yeah.
was that he was out walking once with a
Mhm.
spear in his hand. Bear came at him. He actually killed the bear with the spear.
Well,
I think it was
I know
chasing
who
him
you're
up a
talking about,
tree.
and I have no doubt that that's true. But
Yeah, I mean it's wild, but no, but to your point though,
my
yeah, I
prote-
mean,
my protection kicked in to protect my wife.
yes,
I let her get away,
right,
and I stood there making
yes,
sure that everything was safe.
gotcha, right, yes, right, because that's your you train to sharpen that instinct.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and and don't misunderstand me either. And we were very clear about this
Hmm.
in the book.
Yeah.
While historically this has been an ideal of manhood,
Hmm.
this doesn't mean that females can't train to embody it as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, right, I mean, so again, we have an art that we're trying to introduce other people to. So we never want for anyone to think that that females couldn't come to embody some of these very same virtues if they trained to them. In fact, Plato in his Ideal Republic um, made room for women to train to become the guardians of the republic. Not exclusively in addition to the
Right.
men, but But this is going back, 23 to 2,400 years ago, and Plato was convinced that females could assume that position as well.
Mhm.
But it's just that this has been an ideal of manhood, and I think it's largely been lost, and that's why there are these sort of rival conceptions of manhood that just proliferate in our culture today. There's confusion. There really is a crisis
Yeah,
of manhood.
it seems from what I've been able to observe and obviously read about and so forth, it just seems that a lot of times, especially at a young age, these young men are being told not to act out in what's natural for them. Anytime
Right,
there's any
right,
type of activity, aggression, they're, ADHD or ADD or
yeah,
something. And then they're put on these medications and they destroy these kids at a young age because,
mm,
well, once you thwart the development of the brain at those ages, I don't know if it ever recovers.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't know what these down the line. Well, actually, we can see what the down the line repercussions are. You know, uh,
right,
look at the armed forces right now. I mean, it's only 25% of the people ages 17 to 24 are physically and mentally able to join the armed forces.
wow, is that so?
It's that bad. It's that bad. There's I did a report on. I did a podcast on with the actual statistics a while back. Yeah, like a
Mm,
year or so ago. Yeah, yeah, and most
wow,
due to the obesity, and then also it's like the just the ability to think and reason properly. The things that if you look at it, everybody is in our society right now, especially the young ones, are being inundated. They're receptors. They're not creating things. I mean,
mm,
we have the things that they have, so we had to constantly create things to keep interested and to stimulate our brains, where they're just being
right,
bombarded with information.
right, right, yeah. Well, right, because the information you got this infinite sea of information at their fingertips.
Yep. I mean, it's
Yeah, yeah. So, um, yeah, but I'm not someone. I don't know if you and I would agree on this or not.
try
I'm
me.
right. Well, I'm saying I'm not even though we tend to agree on quite a bit. I'm not someone who thinks that like the today's generation is just like soft through and through, or there's no hope, or that they couldn't wind up rising to the occasion. Because if you think about it, I mean, people from the generation or generations before ours could and probably did easily say the same kinds of things about us.
Yeah,
Because technologically, within the West, things are advancing at such a rapid rate. We did have it much easier than our parents had it, and our parents had it vastly easier than their parents had it.
right, right.
No, I mean, if you think about it, the baby boom generation,
Mhm.
um, which really rebelled, and I'm speaking with very broad brushes here,
Yeah.
but there probably hadn't been a difference in mindset that significant
Mhm.
between any two generations as happened between the World War II generation and the baby boom generation.
Right.
All in the family,
Yeah.
really tried to highlight that between Archie and the meathead,
Yeah.
right? So I think I don't lose hope
No.
with them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. No, I haven't lost hope, but I think that we need to do something. And they have to. And what I'm trying to figure out, because the funny thing is, I always thought my avatar for me training people was, like older, middle-aged kind of guys, right? But I'm
Right.
getting some young guys now who want to be
Wow.
strong, want to be tough. I mean, I got a nice handful of guys that they want to be able to handle themselves in the street, and they never were taught or never was, the self-reliance was really never instilled, ingrained in them at a young age.
Right.
They're, oh, tell the teacher, do this, do that, whatever.
Yeah.
They weren't, hey,
Right.
do it yourself. And now some of these kids are they're out in the real world and like they want to be able to handle themselves. And they're, these guys
Right.
in their 20s. I have a few of them. And
That's great.
they've never been in a fight before.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, right. Yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt. And and I when I try to promote our art, I'll try to reinforce to people that, when you develop your body with that warrior mindset, when you develop your body ultimately for the purpose of taking bad guys off the planet if you have to,
Mhm.
it makes you that much more appreciative of how destructive violence could be. So it incentivizes you to try to avoid the bullshit,
Yep.
right? But a lot of people really don't. They don't get that, and
No.
they think that if they're training to become masterful in the use of violence,
Mhm.
that they're somehow going to train to make themselves into psychopaths or tough guys.
Yeah. Well,
And it's
that's
just not the case.
no, no. And that's why they'll go into, oh, he's a gun nut, or she's a
Yeah,
workout
right,
nut fanatic, or they're health food nuts. Things like
right,
they're
right.
trying to do is disparage you because A, they don't understand it. B, maybe they're afraid to do it because they can't, or they don't know how to do it. So they try to just denigrate the person who's committed and who's into that. But the person who knows the repercussions of war does not want them. Like the
That's right.
situation with the bear.
That's right.
Look, I didn't want to shoot that bear, so
Right,
I didn't. I mean,
right.
I didn't. But I did what I had to do to come between this animal and my wife.
Yes, yeah,
And
right.
I didn't have to. I didn't want to. And I'm sure they could have been justified at some point, but I didn't have to. It turned and left.
Good,
And
good. Black bear, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good. Were you expecting to see that there? I mean, did you have bear in your area
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
know
But
of?
I was talking about because one of them dragged a garbage can the other a few days before on garbage night.
Oh,
I was walking the dog and it must have heard me with the dog and took off. And
yeah.
but I had one right next to my truck, a bigger one than this one. This guy was probably about
Oh,
100 pounds, but I had one that was like 450 right next to my truck about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. I got
oh,
pictures. Yeah,
wow,
I
really?
got pictures of him, video. It's wild. You see the side view mirror of my truck, and I'm taking a picture of this thing. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll send it to
But
you.
here,
Yeah.
but yet you were ready to protect your wife.
Yep. And I'll tell you that my training kicked in because that weapon was out before you knew it. I mean,
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's what I was happy with, because I practice obviously, but I've never had to draw before, and
Right,
under
right.
pressure with a bear 8 feet from me, I was happy that I
Well,
performed.
see, and so what you got me thinking about here is how the difference between those who are trained and those who aren't,
Yeah,
right? Like here, you weren't expecting, especially while you're with your wife, so that just
it's 3 o'clock in
compounds
the
your
afternoon.
concern.
It's 3 o'clock
Right,
in the afternoon. This isn't
right. So
4 in
here,
the morning.
you're not expecting to see that,
Nope.
right? So here, unexpectedly, this happens. There's this adrenaline dump,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
I
I
mean,
mean, the instinct, the instinct would be just to get you and your wife to safety,
yeah,
but immediately because you spend as many hours as you have training,
yep.
you at a subconscious level,
Hmm.
you just knew what to do.
Yes.
Again, and that's what So when I watch a lot of these martial arts demonstrations on YouTube, right, especially the combatives guys and
Yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Well, I have respect. I do. So my intention right now is not to knock anyone, but as well as I do. I mean, your knowledge comes as much from those who are in the know as much as those who aren't.
Right.
Right? Like in order to know what I'm about, I have to know what I'm not.
But or not
And
exactly.
right, and so again, I mean, I have respect for these guys. I appreciate. I see all of us as being the good guys,
Hmm.
training people to take on the bad. Right?
Right.
But there's a lot of misconceptions within the martial arts world, just like there is anywhere else.
Hmm.
And when I see these combatives guys, especially, and some of the traditional martial arts guys as well,
Yeah.
teach techniques,
Yeah.
you know, okay, so that's all fine and good. Within 30 seconds, you can teach someone that if you want to throw an axe hand chop, you have to kind of lift your hand like this and move it,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Right. But if the person is not training to develop their overall body, to really to refine their movement
Hmm.
in the thing that they need to make whatever they do work,
Yeah.
then under the adrenaline charged conditions of a real violent confrontation, they're the odds of them being able to successfully execute what you're teaching them are dramatically lower than they would be otherwise, right? And also, the other guy gets a vote.
Well,
So chances are he's not going to stand there and allow you just to lift your hand and chop. You're going to have to create space for your body. You're going to have to move in a way that throws off a sense of time.
well,
But you can't get there unless you spend time training to
yes.
wire it in.
And this, I'm going to bring up a point here. It's something that we did not see this weekend. And listen, I'm not, I'm just pointing out because it was three women. Okay.
Go ahead. I know. I
Uh,
know.
and look, far be it from me. I've trained some killer women that are awesome,
Right.
and they should be doing whatever they
Yep.
want to do because
That's
they're
right.
trained properly. Uh, but when I saw, it looked like the Three Stooges with those women. She couldn't even holster a weapon. First of all, she was in no condition at all, and
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
looked like three women confused at pickup time at soccer. I mean, they
Yeah.
I had no idea what they were doing. And why do you get someone who's 5'4" guarding someone who's 6'3"? How are you going to cover
Well,
that?
I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, a couple hours ago, and he doesn't train martial arts, but he
Yeah.
does. He did spend a little bit of time in the army, and he's a really great shape. He's about your height. I think when you're about 5'9".
5'10"
So
on a good day, but I'm probably 5'9".
you're a little okay, but well, he's 5'9", right?
Yeah.
Right, and so and this guy's in good shape. He's strong,
Yeah.
looks great, and he said that he shouldn't, or it should never happen that he would be assigned to guard a man who's 6'3",
No, I
six
shouldn't. I'm
four.
5'9". I shouldn't be.
Right. That's the point. I mean, here you're
Yeah.
in, and you have the strength in
Yeah.
conjunction with some other guys to throw him like a rag doll on a car
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
had to, but you
Yeah.
can't
Absolutely.
shield him with your body.
Oh no, you can't. She cannot do that job. And they
Right.
got that job. And then you look at the condition that they were in. I mean,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
that couldn't even. She didn't even know how. She wasn't even familiar with a weapon. She
That's
couldn't
really
holster it.
scary.
That is
Yeah.
scary.
It is.
I mean, look, I shoot at least twice a month. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean,
Right.
I know I'm shooting more, and that's their job. They should be doing it much more than
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It just like over. It just you can't make this stuff up.
no. I mean, it was.
And then it's caught on film. I mean,
I
you
know.
know,
Oh,
geez.
it's a
But no, that's a great. But it just that one story, the one recent story of yours, just with a bear,
the bear.
But you defaulted to your training.
Yep.
It happened all within a microsecond,
That.
right?
That's all.
Yep, it was autonomic. It
Yep.
was subconscious, but that's a function of the training.
Yes.
I'm sure, Phil, you've been doing this much longer than I have, but I'm sure you've had people, prospective students,
Mhm.
come to you over the years and ask you, look, well, how long do you think it would take, before I learn this or
Yeah.
that? In other words, if I can just get a handful of classes under my belt, will that be sufficient to equip me with all the skill I need to? And I say, well, look, it shouldn't take years and years, but the point is, though, you have to refine your movement for whatever you need to do, and that does take a little doing,
That takes time.
right? I mean, you should be able to teach someone how to hit with power within a class or two classes. I mean,
It should take long. It should take
within an
long.
hour,
Yeah.
within an hour. But to hit under duress
Whole
against a
different
moving
story.
target,
Whole
right, against someone who's coming at you with homicidal intention,
exactly. That's a
that's
whole different thing.
a whole different thing.
And I want to know. My question is, these women that they had hired there, had they ever been in stressful situations? Because that looks like the first stressful situation they've ever been in for real. They didn't.
Yeah.
None of them reacted well. None of them.
Yeah,
So
and I don't know what kind of training is even being offered to Secret Service these days.
yeah,
I mean, I
mhm.
heard, I would never want to give a tip off to the bad guys, but I know from people who have trained the police that, well, let's just say that their training could be better
Yeah, I could
than
see.
what they receive at the academy,
Yeah.
right? And again, I won't say anything more beyond that, but yeah, I mean, as I see it, is you have to train as if you're protecting yourself or your loved ones
Yes.
against a determined killer,
Mhm.
and you have to train to become a determined killer if you have to go there.
Yep. You have to be,
If you're not doing that, man, I mean, you're not going to do it.
nope.
Or if you do it, it's going to be by accident.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's so many, you know, aspects involved in being able to perform under pressure, and a lot of it has to do with
right,
mindset, your training, and being present moment. And
right,
you know, again, that's another thing that worries me about this generation. But they're completely distracted all the time. You know,
yeah,
and
yes, yes, that's true.
okay, can I
Right.
imagine this? If my wife and I were sitting there with our headphones on,
Ooh, yeah,
yeah, right?
yep,
I never
exactly.
wear headphones ever, ever.
I don't either.
No.
I don't either. I don't even have a set. In fact, when I go to the gym,
Mhm.
I go to my LA Fitness
Yeah.
daily. I never put headphones on. In fact, there was a guy there
Mhm.
who's probably about your age now, right? Big dude. Um, he was former FBI. I think he was state trooper at one time,
Yeah.
and came up to him once. I noticed he had earphones in once at the gym.
Yeah.
I said, Mark, I said, I said, I'm really surprised to see that because I would think you would know. I would think you would have like more situational awareness.
Mhm.
He said, very good catch. He said, no one ever said. He said, it's not, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
He said, I keep it in just to, for his own purposes.
Right. Right.
And the reason why I don't want to keep any earphones even at the gym is
Mhm.
because there's some gym drama, right? Suppose one member there is having an affair with a married woman. Her husband gets word of it. He comes in one day looking to light the place up,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you just don't know.
I don't know.
People with some roid rage or whatnot. So no, I never have anything in my ear. You
Nope.
never find me walking around through a parking lot or
Nope.
whatever, looking down. But you'd be surprised how many people you see doing it, and not just the kids.
No.
Talking adults,
Adults. I know.
adults.
If they're doing it, what about these poor kids? They have no chance.
Right, right. Yep,
Jack, could you give everyone the name of your book again? And it's I'm assuming it's available on Amazon.
yep. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can find it very easily online. It's called The Warrior Scholar Ideal:
Yeah,
New Essays on an Old Vision.
that's cool.
And the one person who we refer to in there with some degree of frequency is Musashi, Madam Musashi,
Yeah, oh, so,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I know but remember, but Musashi, in addition to winning, being 61-0
I
in
know.
all these duels, right? Kills his first opponent at the age of 13,
Yeah,
fought in numerous battles. So the guy probably has a body count of hundreds, if not more.
yeah,
At 28, 29, 30 years old, he decided he's going to stop, open his own school
yeah.
of sword fighting. But then the guy also stressed the need to be cultured,
Yes,
to become a practitioner of the arts. He not only made references to carpentry, but to calligraphy, to painting,
yes.
and plus he wrote pretty well,
Oh yeah,
which is saying something. The guy was literate, in the 17th century in Japan.
yeah,
So that's one, model. And a lot of these samurais, these are very educated men.
yes.
Socrates was a war hero, and you can go down the list. There's quite a few people. Sun Tzu, I mean, so
Of
it's just
course, yeah.
so. And again, it's so we're clear about this. We're not trying to encourage people to join the military. We're saying no, be a warrior in your own training, and that we're not speaking figuratively there either. Remember, martial arts, right? Martial means of or pertaining to war. So historically and etymologically, martial artists were warriors,
100%.
right? These guys trained ultimately to take the bad guys off the planet.
Yep.
And so we're not encouraging people to go out there, start fights, and kill people, but you have to train to be prepared to go all the way,
Yes.
because if you're not, then you're going to be at a disadvantage to people who want to kill you.
100%. Can't agree with you more. Jack, as always, It's fantastic having you on the podcast.
It's great being here. Yeah.
Oh, always great to have you. And just remember, this is Master Phil in your corner, signing off. Strength and honor.
Sounds good to me. All right.